My name is Omar. I was an Imam in a small village in southern Egypt, respected, disciplined, and bound by the chains of tradition. For years, I stood before my community, teaching the Quran, leading prayers, and living as a model of obedience. But inside, I was withering away, trapped in a silent torment, questioning the very foundations of my faith. In those lonely moments, I felt an unshakable discontent. A soft whisper in my spirit nudged me toward truths I dared not confront. Night after night, I would awaken from vivid dreams, each one illuminating a light that beckoned me, forging a deep longing for a connection I couldn't articulate. The stark reality of my existence loomed over me, demanding answers I was too afraid to seek. Then, everything changed. A devastating car accident stole my consciousness and thrust me into a void, a desolate desert where I encountered a figure shrouded in divine light. It was Jesus, calling my name, shattering the illusions I clung to. The truth, unveiled before me, was both terrifying and liberating. I had been ensnared in a web of fear and control, far removed from the love and freedom that had been offered. Upon awakening, a storm raged within me. I was met with hostility, betrayal by those I once trusted, labeled a traitor in the eyes of my family. Friends turned away, and I was left alone, grappling with my newfound belief amidst a community that demanded my allegiance. Guilt seeped into my soul, drowning my spirit. Yet the light from my encounter burned brightly, a beacon of hope I couldn't extinguish. This journey doesn't belong to me alone. It is a clarion call to countless others trapped in the shadows of doubt and fear, yearning for the truth that pierces the darkness. Today, I invite you to explore this profound transformation with me, as I uncover how a dream changed everything. A message meant not just for me, but for all who are searching for true spiritual freedom. Before we dive deeper, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from, and what time is it there? Your stories are vital in this journey. And if you love Jesus, subscribe to Truth from Beyond. Join me as we embark on this path together, revealing the truths that will set your spirit free. In the small village where I grew up in southern Egypt, life revolved around adherence to Islamic traditions, where the weight of imposed obedience felt like a heavy cloak, suffocating individuality. I spent years as an Imam, walking the paths of rituals and teachings that had been handed down through generations. On the surface, everything appeared serene. Families gathered for prayers, neighbors shared meals, and children learned the tenets of faith. Yet beneath this seemingly harmonious facade lay an undercurrent of fear. Every glance held the potential for judgment, and every word carried the weight of social reputation. Conformity ruled our lives, and in that conformity, I felt my own spirit slipping away. But there were moments when doubt would whisper to me from the shadows of my mind. While I led prayers, a familiar emptiness tugged at my heart, causing me to question whether I was truly serving a divine path or simply perpetuating a system that thrived on fear. In those quiet nights, I would pray for guidance, yearning for answers that never seemed to come. Then, in the midst of that internal turmoil, everything changed. One fateful night, amidst a restless sleep filled with confusion, I drifted into a state I can only describe as transcendent, a near-death experience that would awaken my spirit in ways I had never imagined. In that moment of darkness, I found myself suspended between worlds, enveloped by an intense void that felt both unsettling and safe. Suddenly, a blinding light pierced through the darkness, a magnificent glow that revealed the figure of Jesus before me. He stood radiant, embodying love and understanding that transcended everything I had ever known. In that divine presence, I felt seen and cherished, as if all the burdens of my faith had been lifted. "Ahmad," he called, and hearing my name from his lips ignited a fire within me. a desire to know the truth and an invitation to embark on a journey beyond my own comprehension. As Jesus spoke, he revealed profound truths that shattered the illusions I had held. I understood that the spiritual war wasn't only a battle fought in distant lands. It was raging within our hearts and minds. The elite wielded religion as a weapon, crafting narratives that kept us shackled to fear and division. I witnessed glimpses of suffering inflicted by manipulation and deception, and I realized that the harmony I thought existed in my community often masked the pain of conformity. These revelations ignited a sense of urgency within me, compelling me to confront the truths about the world that I had buried beneath layers of enforced obedience. In that divine encounter, I was shown how powerful ideologies had been twisted to serve hidden agendas, perpetuating a cycle of discontent. The vision was both alarming and liberating. It opened my eyes to the manipulation that permeated our lives. I felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility to share these revelations, knowing that silence would only allow the deception to flourish. I sensed that I was meant to be a beacon of truth, a warrior in this spiritual war, though the fear of rejection lingered at the back of my mind. I imagined the repercussions of speaking out, ostracism from my community, perhaps even danger to my life. When I awoke from that transformative experience, the world felt starkly different. I was filled with clarity, but also an unbearable weight of anxiety, knowing I would carry this truth into a society reluctant to change. I felt an urgent need to reach those around me, to awaken them to the reality that Jesus revealed. But as I contemplated sharing my experiences, the fear loomed large. The thought of confronting the very foundation of my beliefs filled me with dread, yet the desire to liberate others from the chains of deception burned fiercely in my heart. I was determined to harness the revelation I had received to fuel this mission, even amidst the uncertainty that lay ahead. As an Imam and a Quran teacher, I've always maintained an austere appearance, embodying the seriousness and discipline expected of my role. At 30, I was respected within my community, seen as a guide and a pillar of faith. Yet, beneath the surface, an emotional emptiness dwelled within me, a void that I struggled to articulate. Day after day, I led prayers and offered guidance, suppressing my own feelings and the freedom to question anything outside the rigid framework of our beliefs. It was a facade that suffocated my spirit, leaving me yearning for something more, a deeper understanding of existence beyond mere obedience. Over time, I could feel the weight of this spiritual void pressing down on me, while my peers seemed content with their unwavering devotion. I was haunted by questions that lingered in the corners of my mind. Was this life merely about performing rituals and adhering to traditions? What was the essence of faith if it didn't allow for doubt, for exploration? My heart grew heavier with each passing day as I internalized my struggles, fearing what would happen if I voiced them. The idea of being cast out from my community, labeled a heretic for questioning our shared beliefs, instilled a paralyzing fear. Then, during one particularly restless night, the turning point came. I drifted into an expansive, dark void, a near-death experience that reshaped everything I understood about life. In that darkness, I felt an intense presence, a sensation of light that felt both overwhelming and comforting. As the void began to fade, I found myself standing before Jesus, radiant and full of grace. His presence enveloped me in a warmth I had never known, dispelling the fears that gripped my heart. I felt a wave of love wash over me, lifting the burdens of my doubts and revealing a profound truth that had long been hidden from my sight. In that moment, Jesus spoke, and his voice resonated deeply within me. He unveiled the deceptions I had been immersed in, exposing the hidden agenda that manipulated our beliefs and kept us shackled to fear. I witnessed visions of suffering caused by the elite, how they exploited community divisions and stoked conflict to maintain their grip on power. The revelation was jarring, shaking the very foundations of what I thought I understood about faith and community. It became painfully clear that the spiritual war I had felt in my heart was not an isolated struggle. It was a global battle for truth that demanded an awakening. Returning to my physical body was disorienting, yet I emerged with renewed clarity. The epiphany I had received filled me with urgency and purpose. I saw the world through new eyes that understood the importance of sharing this awakening with those still steeped in deception. Yet the fear of ostracism and the potential loss of my role in the community loomed large. I knew I had to confront this conflict head-on. Could I risk everything for the truth? As I grappled with the weight of my decision, I felt the relentless pull toward action, driven by the need to share the light I had encountered with others who were suffering in silence, just as I had been. As I knelt in prayer, the words flowed from my lips, but deep. Inside, a tumult was brewing. My heart felt restless, and every recitation echoed with increasing hollowness. I could see the faces of my community, the devotion in their eyes, but mine were clouded with uncertainty. I had spent years as an Imam, believing that adherence to our faith was the path to truth. Yet, in those moments of solitude, I found myself grappling silently with unvoiced doubts, questioning the very core of my beliefs intertwined with the weight of tradition. The fear of speaking out crept ever closer, consuming my thoughts. How could I express the growing disconnect I felt from my faith without risking everything? The dreams began as gentle whispers during my sleep, and over time, they transformed into vivid manifestations of a luminous being. Each night, I found myself enveloped in a sacred light that radiated warmth and acceptance. It was as if this being was reaching out to me, stirring something within, a deep yearning for understanding and truth. The figure in my dreams bore striking familiarity, and while I longed to dismiss these visions as mere figments of imagination, I couldn't ignore the profound sense of hope that accompanied them. They urged me to look beyond my reality and consider the possibility of a truth that lay just out of reach. With every passing day, the allure of those dreams wrested more of my attention, drawing me away from the rigid confines of my faith. I started to feel that these messages were more than mere fantasies. They contained revelations urging me to confront the deception that permeated our lives. I began to understand that there was a spiritual war at play, not just within me, but all around us. The elite wielded religion as a tool to maintain power, perpetuating a hidden agenda that drove societal division and strife. I could sense a shift in my understanding of faith as I let these truths wash over me, questioning how I had remained blind to them for so long. As I stood in the shadows of my turmoil, balancing the comfort of tradition against the appeal of the truth I was beginning to uncover, I often felt an internal tug of war. The familiar rituals of my prayers began to feel like chains, binding me to a narrative that no longer aligned with the awakening I was experiencing. I yearned for liberation from the fear that had seeped into the fabric of my beliefs, knowing that I couldn't continue living a life cloaked in pretense. The tensions of my dual existence reached a breaking point, and I started to realize that I was being called to embrace this truth and share it with others who might be languishing in similar confusion. Finally, the night came when everything shifted. I once again found myself pleading for clarity in prayer, my heart aching with the desire to understand my path. At that moment, the luminous being appeared vividly before me. This time, I grasped the depth of his presence. Jesus stood there, revealing the essence of my spiritual conflict and offering profound wisdom about love, unity, and awakening. A wave of love enveloped me, and I felt empowered to confront the fears that had haunted me. In his presence, I understood the urgency of my situation. It was time to rise and embrace my role in the spiritual war, to become a beacon of truth for those still ensnared in darkness. With my heart racing, I began to comprehend the impact of my journey. It was not just for me, but for everyone yearning for liberation from the chains of deception that bound us. All. The turning point in my life came unexpectedly, on an ordinary day that quickly spiraled into chaos. As I drove through the streets of my village, my mind was a flurry of thoughts about my responsibilities as an Imam and the lingering questions about my faith that I dared not voice. I had been feeling increasingly disconnected, burdened by the weight of tradition, yet also enveloped in a deep desire for truth. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a collision shattered the mundane. The last thing I remember was the sickening crunch of metal and glass, the world around me blurring into darkness as consciousness slipped away. In that dark void, I found myself in a place that felt devoid of time and space, a vast desert under a starlit sky where silence reigned. I felt both weightless and heavy, as if I had been stripped of all earthly concerns. It was in that emptiness that I saw him, Jesus, radiant and full of light, standing before me. As he called my name, a wave of recognition washed over me, and I realized I was in the presence of something divine. The soothing warmth of his gaze pierced through the layers of doubt and fear that had plagued my heart, igniting a flicker of hope I hadn't felt in years. Jesus spoke to me, and as he did, revelations unfolded like petals of a flower blooming in slow motion. He illuminated the illusions that had clouded my spiritual life. The distractions that had kept me anchored in the confines of deception became painfully clear. The realization struck me that those in power, the elite, manipulated faith for their own benefit, using it as a tool to sow division, fear, and confusion among us. I witnessed scenes of suffering and conflict that were driven by a hidden agenda intended to keep the masses subdued. My heart raced as each revelation poured into my awareness, unraveling the tightly held beliefs I had clung to for so long. I began to see the connections between the spiritual war within my heart and the broader conflicts that plagued our world. Jesus revealed how many wandered blindly, their hearts heavy with burdens imposed by societal norms and expectations. I understood then that this spiritual awakening was not just a personal journey but a collective call to arms, urging us to seek truth amid the deceptions that kept us apart. I could feel the urgency in his words, a plea for me to embrace my role in this awakening. It was no longer enough to remain a silent observer. I was being called to stand against the forces that sought to keep us in a state of fear and compliance. As the visions intensified, I felt the boundaries of my past crumbling, replaced by a mission to share this truth and help others break free from the bonds of spiritual deception. I wrestled with the implications of this calling, torn between the life I had always known and the radical shifts that lay ahead. The thought of breaking away from my familiar reality filled me with trepidation. What would happen to my family, my community? Could I truly forsake everything I had built my identity upon? Yet, in that desert of awakening, I held on to the hope Jesus offered, a hope that transcended fear and promised reconciliation, not just with my own soul, but with those still trapped in the shadows of ignorance. As I was pulled back into the physical world, I awoke in a hospital bed, the stark reality of my circumstances crashing over me like a tidal wave. The experience felt vivid and life-altering, yet I was thrust into a reality where the questions continued to swirl in my mind. I could still feel the warmth of Jesus' presence lingering, igniting a fire within that demanded to be shared. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, but I was determined to embrace this awakening fully, known or unknown, and to allow the transformative power of the truth to guide my every step. Upon awakening from that near-death experience, I felt a jarring shift in my reality. The sterile scent of the hospital room mingled with the weight of heavy expectations that now bore down on me. Expectations from my family, from my friends, and the entire community. I had awoken not just from a physical trauma, but from a lifelong slumber of acceptance that kept me ensnared in the chains of my past. The light of Jesus that had enveloped me during my revelation shone brilliantly in my mind, yet the fears and doubts surrounding me swiftly dimmed its glow. As I processed the reality of my transformation, the first wave hit me hard. Rejection. When my family learned about my experiences, the anger was palpable. Accusations of betrayal flowed freely from their lips, as if I had committed the most egregious sin imaginable. I tried to explain, to share the revelations I had received, but my words seemed to bounce off their ears like stones. They could not see the light that had filled me during that sacred encounter. Instead, they saw only the reflection of their own fear and confusion. Friends I had known for years turned their backs on me, unwilling to grapple with the truth I was beginning to embrace. Suddenly, the bonds that had once connected us were severed, leaving me adrift in an ocean of isolation. Inside, I wrestled with an internal crisis that felt like a tempest raging against my soul. The beautiful awakening I had experienced was entwined with an overwhelming guilt. How could I have turned my back on the beliefs that had defined my life? Was I a fool for believing that I had found a greater truth? I navigated these tumultuous waters. I felt an unbearable weight of betrayal resting on my shoulders. Betrayal not only of my family, but of everything I had held sacred. It was as if I was caught in a cruel paradox. I had awakened to a new reality, yet the very act of awakening drove me further into darkness. I became fearful about openly embracing my newfound beliefs. I would recite prayers, trying to find solace, but inside, I felt increasingly disconnected from the faith practices that had once brought me comfort. Every act of worship turned into a reminder of my fracture, of the distance that had grown between my past and the new path I was beginning to explore. It felt like a dual existence, a life previously devoted to honor and respect, now overshadowed by an unshakable guilt that lingered in every prayer. Each moment felt like a struggle, a wrestling match with the specters of doubt that haunted me relentlessly. As I continued to retreat into myself, I found moments of clarity, hidden amidst the chaos. Alongside the guilt, there was an undeniable truth that seeped into my consciousness. The reason Jesus had appeared to me was to empower me to share what I had learned. The realities he illuminated about the hidden agendas of the elite, the manipulation that perpetuated division and suffering, began to form a clarion call within my heart. I felt a stirring resolve, knowing I couldn't let fear dictate my journey any longer. The revelations I had received during my experience were gifts meant to be shared, and though I was surrounded by rejection, I sensed an indomitable urge to speak out, to enlighten others about the deceptions that kept them shackled. The road ahead was fraught with uncertainty, but I could feel the weight of purpose pushing me forward. It was time to illuminate the darkness, to rise from the ashes of my doubts and embrace the calling I had received. Stepping outside the suffocating grip of societal expectations would not be easy, but Jesus' love and clarity carried me, urging me to trust in the truth that was blossoming within me. I was determined to confront the spiritual war not just for myself, but for all those caught in the web of deception. The awakening was just beginning, and as I prepared to share my testimony, I felt emboldened by the visions of hope that whispered to me in the silence. In the quiet moments after my awakening, I felt a strong pull toward the truth that had been revealed to me during that fateful encounter with Jesus. Despite the weight of my past and the fear of rejection still clouding my heart, I embarked on a clandestine quest for understanding. I knew I could no longer rely solely on the teachings that had shaped my life for so long. I needed to delve deeper, to understand the freedom and enlightenment that my dreams had beckoned me toward. My first step was to explore the Bible, a text I had held at a distance for far too long. As I turned its pages under the cover of darkness, I felt both exhilarated and terrified. Each scripture I read felt like a light piercing through the fog of doubt that had been so pervasive in my life. The stories of hope, redemption, and the profound love of Jesus resonated deeply within me. It was as if each verse was speaking directly to my soul, whispering truths I had long since buried. I began to connect the dots, realizing that the struggle I faced was not merely personal. It was part of a larger spiritual war against a hidden agenda that sought to control us. The realization struck me that many before me had walked this path, grappling with similar feelings of confusion and awakening. As I sought knowledge and clarity, I stumbled upon a discreet support group made up of individuals who shared their own testimonies of transformation and enlightenment. In their presence, I found a sense of belonging that had been absent for so long. Each story of awakening revealed a common thread: the struggle against societal expectations and the desire to uncover the truth beneath layers of deception. These gatherings became my sanctuary, a place where I could express my fears and hopes without judgment. Yet, even in moments of peace, the fear of fully losing my identity loomed large, like a shadow over my journey. The tension within me grew as I questioned how to reconcile my old life with the new truths I was beginning to embrace. I craved authenticity, but feared the disapproval of those I had loved and respected for years. With each meeting, I felt a mixture of comfort and anxiety. I knew that stepping into my new identity as a follower of Jesus would come at a cost, possibly severing ties with my family and community. Nevertheless, the fire lit inside me urged me to move forward, to serve those who might be caught in the same spiritual quagmire I had faced. I found solace in the belief that sharing my experience could bring hope to others who felt similarly lost. As the days turned into weeks, I continued my secret explorations and built stronger connections within the group. Together, we discussed the various ways in which the elite manipulated faith to maintain their grip on power, perpetuating fear and division in society. Our conversations often circled back to the urgent need for awakening, the call to rise against the deception that clouded our world. I started to envision a future where love and truth could bridge the divisions that had long held us captive. Yet even as my faith solidified, uncertainty lurked in the background. I wrestled with the notion that the journey forward would inevitably lead to deeper conflicts in my life, drawing a line between the person I used to be and the person I was becoming. In the aftermath of my awakening, I slowly began to realize that my experience went far beyond personal transformation. It was a calling, a divine summons to share the truth I had uncovered. I felt the weight of this realization pressing down on me, an urgent reminder that I wasn't merely fighting my own internal battles, but was embroiled in a greater spiritual war that demanded a response. Each day, as I struggled with the implications of my faith shift, I grew increasingly aware of the deception that surrounded us, perpetuated by an elite few who dictated the narratives we followed blindly. The polarizing forces in our world seemed to blink at me now, naked for the first time, demanding my attention and action. The decision to break my silence wasn't an easy one. The fear of retaliation haunted me, echoing in my mind, but so too did the overwhelming urge to stand up and share my story. I envisioned the faces of those still ensnared in the chains of misunderstanding, those trapped by fear and manipulated by a hidden agenda that fueled the fires of division and strife. I saw how my journey could serve as a beacon for others struggling to reconcile their own beliefs, and the urgency of that mission ignited a fire within me that I could no longer ignore. It became clear that the truth I had been gifted was not meant to be hoarded in silence. It was a light meant to shine in the darkness. I could feel the tension building each time I recited the prayers of my past, my heart heavy with the knowledge of the path I was now destined to walk. I began to reach out, seeking to articulate the insights I had gained from my experience with Jesus. The revelations I had received were profound. His messages about love, unity, and the importance of awakening resonated deeply. Yet, with every conversation I initiated, I sensed the risk growing larger. The potential for loss, for division, for a dangerous confrontation with the very foundations of my former life. Despite that risk, I knew I had a responsibility to wield this truth like a sword, cutting through the deception that enveloped so many. As I immersed myself in discussions with friends and family, I witnessed a mixture of reactions. Some opened their hearts and began questioning their own beliefs, while others pushed back, clinging desperately to the narratives they had known for so long. Each interaction became a battleground where the spiritual war was fought in real time. My resolve deepened with every encounter. I felt Jesus guiding me, urging me to remain steadfast while offering understanding and compassion. This journey would not be easy, but I was committed to planting seeds of truth, hoping they would lay the groundwork for a broader awakening. The days turned into weeks, and I began to accumulate stories of transformation from others who had similarly encountered Jesus and found their way to a new faith. These connections forged bonds that felt profoundly real, transcending the social and religious divisions that once separated us. As we gathered, I understood that I was not an isolated warrior. I was part of a larger movement dedicated to shedding light on the hidden truths that bound us. The call to action vibrated through our discussions, imbuing us with unyielding hope as we stood together on the precipice of change. I knew that if I continued to stand firm in my conviction, embodying the love and truth that Jesus represented, I could inspire others to awaken and step boldly into the light. As I stood at the edge of my village, a wave of emotions crashed over me: fear, excitement, sadness. Making the decision to leave my past behind was no small feat. I had spent my life as Omar, a respected Imam anchored in tradition, yet I was no longer the man defined by the confines of my upbringing. In shedding my name, I was also shedding the expectations that weighed heavily on my soul. Walking through the desert, the vastness around me mirrored the internal journey I was about to embark upon. Each step felt like a release, an act of defiance against the hidden agendas that had kept me shackled to a life devoid of true spiritual freedom. The sun beat down mercilessly, yet I felt invigorated. I could sense the shift within me, the awakening I had long sought. Solitude enveloped me, and as I walked, I began to reflect on the revelation that had transformed my life. In that previous encounter with Jesus, I had been shown not just the depths of my own deception, but the truth about the world surrounding me. The manipulation of faith by the elite, designed to ensure their control and suppress genuine connection, became startlingly clear. It was a revelation that demanded to be shared, a message of hope that could lead others toward their own liberation. In the days that followed, I began to recite the stories and truths that had ignited my spirit, planting seeds of hope as I encountered others in need. I met fellow seekers yearning for understanding, individuals trapped in the same cycles of fear that I had once known. As we gathered in the quiet of the desert night, I felt the camaraderie grow. Together, we discussed our struggles against the spiritual war around us, a battle for truth that was all too real. Each shared story became a thread weaving a more profound tapestry of awakening, a united front against the deception that had suffocated so many. One evening, as we sat beneath a canopy of stars, I dared to speak more openly about the truths Jesus had revealed to me. I talked about the hidden agenda of the elite, how they used fear and division to manipulate both faith and society. My heart raced with urgency. I knew these discussions could lead to transformation. As each person joined in, sharing their insights and breakthroughs, I could feel a ripple of change coursing through our gathering. The more we spoke, the more I realized that we were not just individuals seeking out personal liberation. We were a community poised to awaken and challenge the darkness that enveloped us. Still, as I sowed these seeds of truth, a deep fear lingered in the background. What would happen if our discussions were discovered? The possibility of backlash loomed over me like a cloud, threatening to cast a shadow over the hope we were nurturing. Nevertheless, I felt called to continue, bolstered by the belief that this movement had the power to awaken those still lost in the shadows. As I faced the unknown, I became more determined to embrace my purpose, to enlighten others, to heal the fractures caused by fear and deception, and to promote the love and unity that Jesus embodied. My journey through the desert had only just begun, and I was ready to move forward into the light, ignited by the truth I had found. Now that you've journeyed with me through the shadows of my past and the light of revelation, I urge you to pause for a moment. Have you ever felt that tug in your soul, that whisper that urges you to look beyond the surface of what you've been taught? Could it be that the universe is calling you to awaken, to see the truth wrapped beneath layers of fear and deception? This isn't just my story. It's a chapter in a greater narrative, a narrative that includes each and every one of you. My encounter with Jesus in that desolate void showed me that our lives are indeed intertwined in a spiritual tapestry woven with purpose. We are all participants in this profound battle, resting not in mere tradition, but in the urgency to break free from a system designed to keep us divided. The world is crying out for truth, and I believe each of us carries a piece of it within our hearts. Are you ready to unpack that truth? Are you ready to embrace the extraordinary calling that may just be waiting for you, just as it awaited me in my darkest hour? I want to hear your truths too. Have you experienced moments that made you question everything you thought you knew? Or perhaps you've had whispers of the divine in your own life? Share your stories in the comments below. Your experiences matter, and they could inspire someone else to awaken to their truth as well. And if this message has ignited something in you, don't forget to subscribe to Truth from Beyond and hit that notification bell. This isn't just about numbers. It's about building a community marked by truth, unity, and the quest for spiritual freedom. What's coming next is even more powerful, more stories that can light the way for you or someone you love. In our next video, I'll delve deeper into another powerful testimony about liberation and the supernatural call to embrace the light. I'm Omar, and I can't thank you enough for being here with me. Remember, embrace the truth, for it is the key to unlocking the life you were meant to live. Until next time, stay blessed and vigilant.